um, about the Northeast Earth Coalition. Yes, it's here. So the year 2020 will be remembered in a very special way, but we have something to share with you, an accomplishment that we achieved in last year. So welcome to our sixth Acting Locally for a More Sustainable World Conference. It is my pleasure on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Northeast Earth Coalition and myself. We are grateful for the support of our sponsors, Common Interests, Partner for Earth Foundation, and Helen and William Mason Foundation. And this is what I have to share with you. These are some of the images of the conference last year, and indeed it was a big event. More than 350 people and more than 65 organizations were attending the event. People were collaborating, people were networking, and we had Jeff Titter, New Jersey Sierra Club Executive Director of the keynote speaker, also the internationally known Naima Penniman, poet, environmentalist, and farmer from Soul Fire Farm. We presented in 2020 6 webinars on gardening, and we have attendees from Maine to Florida, and different topics, including herbs, wildlife habitats, pollinator, vegetable gardening, among others. During the pandemic, we were not able to gather face to face, but what we did was created the sense of a community working together to present what they are doing at a home level and community level. We also created in a record time a new community garden on Pine Street, Montclair, New Jersey. This garden was created in 21 hours. 45 days later, the garden was delivering food to our local food program. 80% of the products of this community garden is going to local food programs. During the time of isolation, we were trying to do something to alleviate the stress the people were going through during the pandemic. So we created some music events in coordination with Montclair Make Music Day. And here is what you see in Crane Park. 6 weekends we were playing music at the park. It was the first open public space event in our community. And the community garden were very productive. You can see in the picture the beauty of our harvest. 26 weeks growing fresh local food for 6 families participating in our community garden locally in Montclair, and over 65 families in northern New Jersey, of which all of these together produce more than 7,000 pounds of fresh local food. We also took the advantage that people were not able to deal face-to-face and created the NEEC Seeds and Plant Exchange. And this program, which was really simple, worked beautifully in the community and beyond. People were exchanging plants in the spring and seed, and it was working beautifully. And we have more than 160 people participating in this program. And then we added a new environmental initiative, the Northeast Pollinator Pathway. I don't want to give details about this project because that is what our guest speaker will be doing tonight. In addition, when the gardening season was over, we realized that hunger was right there. People were getting facing food insecurity, homeless were even in worse condition than ever before. So we created the Little Pantry, and this is a really simple philosophy. Take what you need and give what you can. And we started on one single pantry, and now we have in project 7, and we started in Montclair, and this is crossing border to another community in different places. So we are now have presence now in Bloomfield and Cedar Grove. The total amount of each pantry per month distributed to people facing food insecurity is over 1,000 pounds. And that is what we know for sure we are delivering to the pantries. Individual donations are not part of this calculation. So the amount, the estimated amount is even bigger. And we have more than 20 volunteers working in this program. The year's biggest success was our volunteers. In the previous video that I showed you, we mentioned 140. 140 volunteers were in 2019. The pandemic increased the number to over 250 volunteers. We were working in coordination with Montclair High School students, family participating in community gardens. The volunteers did cleanups, they prepared the soil, they planted seed, flowers, they watered the gardens, harvested crops, and delivered the food to our food programs. And they donated a large amount of time. And you can see it in the picture, the Montclair Mutual Aid volunteer. They were wonderful. They were considered heroes because all the time that they dedicated locally. And in total, our volunteers donated more than 4,000 hours in 2020, which is the equivalent of $176,000 in donation. 21 is looking good, and we will continue growing and serving our communities. Thank you for your attention, and Doug, it's up to you now.
Thank you so much, Jose. When you get a second, just stop your screen there for us so we could get ready for our next speaker. And again, friends, I mean, the NEEC is really out here doing some of the most important work that not just New Jersey needs, but the whole world right now. One of the things that I love most about this conference every year is that we get a little update from Jose and the crew about all the great things that they've been doing. And honestly, I think we could all agree that after the craziness of 2020 and the bit of a rocky start that we had to 2021, hearing these positive things is really inspiring. And I'm always looking forward to following the NEEC and what you guys conjure up next. At the NEEC, we believe that a strong local food system contributes to the health of our entire community, and we will work to facilitate greater understanding of the social, economic, and environmental impacts of our food choices. We support small family farms, urban farming projects, community vegetable gardens, and backyard food production. We believe in promoting a healthier society through education about appreciation of local, fresh, sustainably raised produce and products. We promote energy conservation and integration of renewable, sustainable energy into local communities through advising local organizations and individuals, demanding better energy policies, and participating in local energy projects. We support the promotion of sustainable, eco-friendly transportation, including biking, walking, and the development of accessible, reliable, and affordable public transportation. We envision a region where people can coexist and prosper in harmony with their environment. To this end, we promote the preservation and restoration of the natural environment. And for that reason, the NEEC is needed, has been needed, and is going to be needed for some time. And we're looking forward for all the great work that's going to be coming out. And without further ado, I think we should get ready with our agenda here. Our first speaker of the 6th conference for the NEEC is going to be Mary Ellen. She holds a master's in environmental management from Yale. As a former elected official, land trust president, current Conservation Commission chair, and CT Deep certified master wildlife conservationist, she has drafted legislation and implemented plans to protect critical open space and watershed lands, developed a smart growth pedestrian friendly plan and policy, and co-chairs the MetroCog Conservation Technical Advisory Committee. Ms. LeMay is currently working on green infrastructure projects in the Pequannock River watershed and recently completed a dune restoration project in Maine. She is the founder of EcoSites LLC, an environmental consulting, design, and outreach cooperative specializing in the use of natural systems for habitat restoration and stormwater management. Ms. LeMay is a member of the regional team of the Northeast Pollinator Pathways Project, which Mr. German gave us a quick preview to. Needless to say, myself and I'm sure all of our other attendees are very eager to hear more about it, Mary Ellen. So please take the floor.
Great, thank you very much. And I think you can probably see me. I'll begin to share my screen.
Crystal clear.
Okay.
And again, if you have any questions about the running of the PowerPoint or something during this, just give me a shout, Mary. I'm watching.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think you should probably see my first slide now. And I just wanted to tell you how honored I am to be invited by Jose to kick off this incredible conference. You have a great lineup of speakers, and I'm really honored to be able to share with you today the Pollinator Pathway initiative, which it was interesting to hear that 2016 was when you had your first conference for NEEC, because that is kind of the year that the Pollinator Pathway began to emerge. So so we're definitely on the same wavelength here in terms of taking the initiative to start some really great programs. So let's see, we'll go to my first slide. So I wanted to share with you tonight how this Pollinator Pathway began, and really how important it is to help connect the landscape and the landowners and the community. And it's just been more successful than we ever imagined. I'll share with you how we started this, why we started this, and more importantly, how you can roll this out in your own community. And Jose has already been very successful in doing this in many areas of New Jersey, and he shared some slides with me. So, but this initiative has been super successful since 2017, and someone asked me if I could share kind of my background, not in terms of where I went to school or anything like that, but where I was born and raised. And if you look at the red dot on this, it all began in the least green place ever. I was raised on the doorstep of New York City, 10 minutes from Kennedy Airport, 10 minutes from LaGuardia Airport, and not a heck of a lot of green around here. But to me, that is my memory of ecosystems. My ecosystems were gray infrastructure, not green infrastructure. So just to give you a background, that this is where it started for me, and I really had no contact with with anything green for most of the beginning of my life. And then I zoom in here to show you where my actual house was. And this is my house. The backyard, my swing set was right up here next to the main line of the Long Island Railroad, 6 tracks, 2 third rails. This is the main power station of the Long Island Railroad, next to the Cross Island Parkway, and not a heck of a lot of green. Actually, this triangle here that looks like a little park is a steep slope that goes right down to the Cross Island Parkway, and that's where I used to go sleigh riding. And my mother actually encouraged my sleigh riding down there. So a little scary, but I want you to focus really on the green here, because these trees and the green along the railroad was not there when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s. And the reason it wasn't there was because our friends at the Long Island Railroad, in an effort to prevent fires from the sparks that flew off the third rail, would spray herbicide. So the tree that I had in my backyard died, my hedge died, and so it was the backyard I played in was completely exposed to the Long Island Railroad. But what is really the scariest thing is I found out 30 years later that the herbicide that the Long Island Railroad used was, think of this during the Vietnam War era, Agent Orange. And I was totally shocked to learn this in the past couple of years, because some Long Island Railroad workers sued the railroad for exposing them to Agent Orange during that time. And they won the lawsuit. However, I and all of my friends and neighbors here, we didn't sue because we didn't know what was going on, and we didn't know we were exposed to Agent Orange. But if I could live another life, I would go back and look at every one of my neighbors who had cancer, died of lymphoma, leukemia, pancreatic cancer, all up and down all these neighborhoods. And, that would take a life's work to prove, because we were exposed to so many environmental toxins in this area. But this is kind of the inception of why I'm so opposed to the use of pesticides and herbicides, because when I was exposed through my young life, I think that was just a terrible thing to have to go through, and it probably helped me to create the kind of person that I am now, who's very sensitive to the environment. And because there was really nature deficit disorder, we didn't have native plants there, we hardly had anything green. The only things that I saw in my backyard were typical city birds like the English sparrow, and then of course the usual squirrels in the backyard, and then starlings. And at the time, my parents put a bird feeder in the backyard for me to watch these non-native invasive creatures in my backyard, except for the squirrel. And when the squirrels that didn't have the fluffy tails started showing up at the feeder, or the little rats, my parents took the feeder down. So I was left with really nothing then, except not only Ritz crackers, but if you look at the bottom of the Ritz crackers there's an ant. And yes, this is definitely photoshopped, but it cracked me up because I used to spend my summers sitting in the driveway feeding ants Ritz crackers because where the chain link fence penetrated the asphalt in my driveway, these pavement ants came up. And I used to sit there for hours feeding them. And so to me, that was my memory of the environment. That's all I had when I was growing up. And it definitely impacted my life. And I just share this with you because even an unlikely experience or living in the city, you still can become an environmentalist, and you can be a conservationist and a tree hugger and a bee lover, because that's what I am. And I kind of like to look back on my life and see 3 stages of learning throughout school, earning in the years that I was trying to make a living, and return, which is what I'm doing now. And that's a picture of me graduating from Yale at age 52. I was the oldest kid in the class. And it was one of the best experiences of my life because this is where my passion is. So what brought me here to this pathway was teaming up with a really great group of people in 2017. And this was a Connecticut magazine. It was kind of fun to become the centerfold of Connecticut magazine when you're in your 50s. But this is the group that's made it all happen, that started the pollinator pathway. Way over here on the right is Kim Stoner. She is our state of Connecticut entomologist. She's the queen bee. And in 2016, when you guys were forming your first conference for the NEEC, Kim Stoner was writing our state pollinator protection law. And that was 2016. And at the same time, my colleague, my conservation colleague, Donna Merrill, was tasked with a project to develop a stewardship initiative to do outreach to landowners. She came across an article in the newspaper about the bee highway in Oslo, Norway. And I remember the day distinctly in 2016 when she said, I read this really cool article. Do you think we could do this here? Do you think people would want to get on a bee highway and change the way they treat their backyards so we can connect and create corridors? So I said, yeah, let's try it in one town. So we started it in her town. And that was in February of 2017, exactly 4 years ago this month. And the person over here is Louise Washer, who's the executive director of the Norwalk River Watershed Association. And Louise has been a critical part of our team for all these years, because she was the one that brought the pollinator pathway concept away down from one town to 6 towns and began the spread across the state of Connecticut. So we're all volunteers. And we just started this because it was a way to really try to improve biodiversity and starting in one backyard at a time. So this is the kind of original pathway when we were just in Connecticut. Wilton is the point where we started, and then went down up and down the Norwalk River watershed where Louise brought the pathway, and then we connected from town to town to town to town. And before you know it, we were at where we are now, which is 130 towns across about 5 or 6 states now. And the reason the pollinator pathway is working is because it's really just an idea. And it's an idea that's shared among existing conservation organizations. It's truly a network. And it is not a 501c3. It's not an LLC. It is managed by 2 groups. One is our steering committee, which I sit on. We manage the website, newsletter, educational materials, We connect towns that reach out to us and give presentations. And basically we go from one town to another, teaching about the pollinator pathway. But the other group that manages the pathway is your local towns through existing organizations. So you guys are the ones that organize the volunteers. You give the talks, you offer home visits, you act as a fiscal sponsor, and you make and manage the page on the pollinator pathway. And so it is truly a grassroots organization that goes across the landscape, creating corridors. And this is where we are now. As of this month, we're at 130 towns. Thousands of individuals have joined since 2017. And I saw this poem and I thought that this really typifies what the pathway is and why it's so successful. That we cannot hold a torch to light another's path without brightening our own. And this is why it's working, because you know, we have a success and we go to the town next door and we share with them what we did. And then they share that to the next town. And then it goes over to New York, then it comes to New Jersey, Maryland, Massachusetts. And before you know it, you have this pathway that's completely illuminated by people who have connected across the landscape. And so this slide I'm going to show at the end of my presentation too, because these are the real key points that we've decided why the Pollinator Pathway Project has worked. Number one, we have the power of a charismatic character, whether it's a butterfly or a bee, and that opens the doors to start a community conversation about protecting and restoring biodiversity. In the early years in 2013 and 14, I used to go from town to town and talk about wildlife corridors and restoring biodiversity across the landscape. And it was important, people understood it, but it wasn't something that was attainable because land trusts can't buy all the land and protect it all. So it was a very hard concept to get people to understand how we're going to create these corridors. But once we scaled it down to the level of pollinator, it was understandable. People could get it because the pollinators show up. They show up in your backyard, and the more you plant for them, the more of them show up. So it was a powerful thing to find this charismatic character. Look, for example, the National Wildlife Federation has their panda bear. And so this is why this kind of worked for us. It's a very positive message. It's framed around local action. We can talk about biodiversity, we can talk about extinction, and people will put their hands over their ears and they don't want to hear it. If we keep the message positive about what people can do and take action steps, then they're sold and then they will join up. And the importance of keeping it simple and affordable, or even free in most cases, as you'll see. It's a decentralized local control, a grassroots organization, which is free and really works beautifully. And people need an excuse to reach across boundaries and talk. And I think now more than ever, of course, with COVID, we might not be able to do that in person, but using Zoom lectures like this has been a real major factor in the success of some of these small organizations, because we can do lectures like I don't have to drive to New Jersey to talk to you. I can sit in my house. So this has just been a great opportunity. This is why the Pollinator Pathway is working. We're offering people a way to take action at home and join a wave of others who are taking action. And as Doug Tallamy says, if you plant it, they will come. And we also tapped into what was already there. There's a general anxiety about the sharp declines in the bee, bird, and butterfly populations. Many of you may have read this article from 2018, 2019 about the insect apocalypse. In that issue, they talk about the impact on the bird apocalypse as well. Monarch populations, as we know, are down. Eastern and Western monarch populations. Honeybees are struggling. North American bumblebees are in a decline. And some studies like this German study show they had a 76% decline in all flying insects. This is why our windshields don't have bugs on them anymore when we drive down the road. This is a global epidemic, and it's super scary and it's super depressing. Most people would rather throw their hands up and say, there's nothing I can do about it. But I'm here to tell you that you can do something, because it has been working. Because we focused on these little guys. We focused on the pollinators, the bees and the moths and the butterflies, and people began to understand why this was so important. So this is an example of what we used to try and talk about. We used to get people to visualize large connected corridors for wildlife, water, and recreation. In the face of climate change, we need to allow and encourage species to cross across the landscape and move north so that they can get to areas where they can find food and shelter and mate and reproduce. And if we don't help with creating these corridors, they can't get to the more resilient landscapes that we find in the northern areas where there are a lot of woods. So this was something people understood, but it was just such a big scale. We didn't think, nobody was understanding how to do it. You know, again, we can't buy all the land. But what we needed to do was to understand that these resilient landscapes, our protected lands, our parks, our nature preserves, have dense biodiversity because the physical diversity of the landscape equals biological diversity. The more plants that you have, the more animals you will have. And certain land areas have a higher capacity to host more species because of their geology and shaping. So the resilient sites will always hold the most biodiversity, no matter how the climate changes. And we need to maintain connectivity to these sites to allow species to naturally distribute, and this keeps our region resilient. So the higher biodiversity joined with connectivity makes our landscape climate resilient. So we said, that's great. How can we do this at the backyard level? Because what we realized was the backyards are the connective tissue between the protected landscape. So this shows the green dots here, as you can imagine, are protected. They're land trust properties, they're nature preserves, they are the landscapes that have that biodiversity. And in between here, the blue squares, that's us. Those are our neighborhoods, our cities, our towns. And what we need to do is try and connect to create this corridor across the landscape. It's a corridor of public and private properties that provides native plant habitat and nutrition for pollinators. So how do we create that corridor, that pathway? One backyard at a time. If we get people to change the way they treat their backyards by stopping the use of pesticides, by planting native plants, by changing their lawns, we can create a pathway across the landscape. And municipalities and property owners create these pesticide-free healthy yards and public spaces for pollinators, for pets, and for us. We all win when we do this. So a question I often get is, well, how close do these connections have to be? And, you know, it really actually depends. That's the answer, because the larger the pollinator, the larger the range. So, of course, we know about our monarchs who can fly 11 to 150 miles. And we go all the way down to our little green sweat bee that goes 500 feet. So there's a variety of areas and foraging distances that pollinators go. So any connection helps. You and your neighbor, you and a block away, 2 blocks away, they could fly a couple of houses away. So if you have a neighbor that's not on board with this, pollinators should just keep skipping over. But the more you connect, the more you get people on board, the healthier the corridor will be. So why are we creating this pathway here in the Northeast? Again, fragmentation. We have neighborhoods all over the place, but that's not a bad thing. We're not going to, you know, just bulldoze the neighborhoods. We just need to change the way the land is treated. And we have smaller private ownership, which means, again, we can change how these private owners treat their land. And of course, we've got our fabulous lawn culture, which you might as well really just pave your whole front lawn because it doesn't provide habitat for really any living thing. And then when you add pesticides on top of it, it becomes a toxic landscape. So this again just kind of reiterates the fragmented habitats here we have in the Northeast. Here's an open space, here's an open space. Species can't get across. It's like running across a 6-lane highway or actually running across 6 tracks of the Long Island Railroad. It's almost impossible for species to get across our neighborhoods to get to resilient landscapes unless the connective tissue, again, our backyards, unless we change the way we treat our backyards. With native plants in here, no pesticides, and you make it welcoming. And we can connect this landscape. We can reconnect what's fragmented by making our properties stepping stones across the land for a free flow of species and a healthy native landscape. And this is actually an aerial photograph of what you'd call a stepping stone. This is a house. This is in the Midwest. And if I were flying over this landscape, this is where I would stop because they have native grasses. They have lots of trees and shrubs. And it looks like they're connected to what was an old tree farm, maybe. And so this helps to give you an example of what a connected habitat looks like. And then if this guy did the same thing and this guy did the same thing, we would have a festival of pollinator fun here. So the more people do it, the more they can move across the landscape. And the other reason that we think this has been really successful is we've kept the message simple. People can remember 3 things. So we told them to do 3 things and they're doing it. One is rethink your lawn, whether that means reduce the size, mow less, and use organic lawn care practices. Number 2, plant native plants. That is the most important thing that you can do to bring back the pollinators and the birds and increase the biological diversity of your land. And number 3, avoid pesticides. You do not want to plant these natives and then create an ecological trap where you're spraying them and then killing them. Number 1, I'll go over each one briefly. Rethink your lawn. And I always get the question, well, you say plant native plants and then you talk about clover. And when we're talking about lawn or rethinking your lawn, the next step really is leaving the clover in the lawn. And in this case, look at this. This is a friend of mine who decided she wanted clover islands. So she mowed around these patches of clover and these were just buzzing with life. And so she has a couple of these this year. Maybe she'll have more the following year, but she can still use her lawn and then still have room for pollinators too. This lawn is actually all clover. And this is in Italy. This is at the Vatican. And most people were taking pictures at this point of the Sistine Chapel, because this is the front lawn of the Sistine Chapel. And I was taking pictures of the lawn because it was all clover and how beautiful that is. So yes, maybe they're not native, but this is certainly much more of a strong contributor to biodiversity than plain old lawn. And then you can put sedges. Sedges are great because bees can nest in between them and you don't have to mow them. So the second thing, again, plant native plants. At the Aspetuck Land Trust, where I work during half of my week, we come up with demonstration sites, just like you have here in New Jersey, which show people how beautiful native plants are. And especially, I liked this slide because it showed how our non-native plants that we've put here have very small root systems, where our natives have incredibly long, deep root systems. And if we're going to continue to face climate change and the rain bombs and the 6-inch rain episodes that we're having, we want these plants in our backyard to hold our soil in place. These will be washed away. Look at the turf has virtually no root system whatsoever. So our natives are supposed to be here. Genetically, they are adapted to our climate and our soil. And this is why they're so important to have our natives and reduce the non-natives in your backyard. And the other beautiful thing about the pollinator pathway is when you're planting natives, it is a scalable model. You can start with containers, little pots on Main Street in front of stores and restaurants. Then you can have gardens in your backyard or at businesses or schools. Demonstration sites is the next scale of complexity, and restoration sites. So as you go up this continuum, the planning gets a little bit more complicated and the cost goes up, but it doesn't have to be. It can be as small as the container gardens. And this is what the Bee Highway in Oslo, Norway did. This was pots that were on people's porches across the city of Oslo, and that's how they connected the landscape. And then number 3, of course, avoid pesticides and herbicides. I won't get into this in too much depth. For me, it's very obvious. I would certainly not expose my children or my pets to a lawn that had a sign like this on it. And we're not quite sure when, as a society, we thought that this was okay to have, pets, children, and adults with a cross through it as a sign on your front lawn. It doesn't make any sense. Our backyards do not need pesticides. They do not need herbicides. They can be everything that you want to deal with is managed naturally and in a healthy way. So our goal is to have this sign disappear and have more pollinator pathway signs across the landscape. And so what we've realized was when we wanted to teach biodiversity that the pollinators are the starter drug. It's easy to understand. When you plant these plants, these pollinators will show up in a few hours. And if your yard's safe enough for pollinators, it's safe enough for all insects. And then the birds show up because you have caterpillars. And then the mammals show up and the pets show up and your families are healthy. So this is the starting point. Pollinators are the first step in understanding biodiversity. And then when we want to dive more deeply into biodiversity and move up the food web, this is what we need to do. We need to increase the number of native plants on our landscape. So if you think back to the picture of my house in Long Island, where I had like virtually nothing green, who was in my backyard? Rats, squirrels, and a couple of invasive birds. That was it, because there was nothing there for them, nothing. When people begin to create a landscape where they're building, planting along streams and corridors, riparian corridors, rivers, planting clusters of trees, putting that fabulous oak tree, more animals, plants, and insects will start to show up. And then a truly healthy landscape is where you have all natives and everything there that they need, and you have biodiversity. This is a healthy landscape, sharing the land with everything else that's supposed to be there. More biological diversity means more life. And this is a slide from our friend Doug Tallamy, who I know is going to be a speaker for your conference. And this slide tells it all. These native plants are the source for all energy that supports life. The insects and the native plants have been genetically linked for thousands of years in the Northeast and for millions of years across the country. These native plants provide the food that is the source of life. And the caterpillars and all of the pollinators that show up and eat them are then in turn eaten, obviously, by spiders, reptiles, amphibians, rodents, and 96% of terrestrial birds need to eat caterpillars, not birdseed. Birdseed is great now. I have feeders now in the winter, but in the spring, they need these guys for their babies. And then, of course, up the food chain, the carnivores and the herbivores, and the more that you have of all of these, the more balanced your landscape will be. And I always, this is my lamp on my desk, and I keep this with me. These are oak leaves. Then the oak leaves during the summer, when I looked up in the trees, I saw they looked like Swiss cheese. They had holes in them. And a few years ago, I probably would have said, oh my gosh, something's infesting my oak trees. And, some people would still spray. And when those leaves came off the tree, I pasted them on my lamp to remind me that I have a biodiverse backyard because those oak trees and those oaks did their duty all summer long, providing the food for caterpillars. And if my oak leaves didn't look like that, I would be really worried. So I keep them there all the time when my cat doesn't pull them off and chew on them. So starting a pollinator pathway, this is the second part of my talk where I give you the pointers about how to do this in your town. And we've come up with basically 6 points that have made successful pathways. And because you already have a couple there in your towns in New Jersey, and Jose has sent me some great pictures, I'm sure you've done most of these things, but it's great to just understand that you're on the right path. So convene your team, plan a route, hold a kickoff event, engage community members, spread the word, and stay connected. And I'll go through each one of them briefly. Convene your team, look at your town. Do you have local nurseries, a nature center, conservation commission, garden club? Garden clubs have master gardeners in them, watershed associations. So this is my town. I put this together for my town. And by the way, I live in Trumbull, Connecticut, and we don't have a pollinator pathway yet because I haven't launched it, but I've gotten the team together. So I've been too busy in other towns that I've kind of left my poor town out, but this is our team. And the beautiful thing is you guys already have your team. So I asked Jose to send me the list of the team members that you have, and I always love to go and look for logos for these organizations, and I put them here for you. Garden Club of Montclair, the Native Plant Society of New Jersey, Brookdale Park, and there's just so many great organizations you have that are on your pollinator pathway team, and you need just maybe one from each organization. Two, you don't need everybody on board, but if you have a sampling like this creates success. Number 2 is plan your route. I love looking at maps. Everybody loves looking at maps of their towns, but the cool thing when you look at maps is to look at the next town. And this is Louise Washer and I drawing and connecting pathways across from town to town. This was like the original pathways. And the fun thing to look for is your areas of highest conservation value. Where are your parks? Where are your lakes? Where are your rivers? And then look at the neighborhoods next to it and say, that's the connective tissue for my corridor. That's where I'm going to focus for my pollinator pathway. And then when I go south on my pathway in my town, I link to Bridgeport. When I go north, I link to Monroe. Over here is Shelton. And then you begin to work with the towns around you. Now, I just have a caveat that a couple of the original towns have decided that their whole town's on the pollinator pathway. They're not going to just restrict it to a corridor like this. The whole town's on it. They want everybody to change their landscape practices. And I think that's a great thing. Number 3, hold a kickoff event. This is a photograph from 4 years ago, this week, actually. When we had the very first kickoff event, we had a couple of speakers and we talked about the Wilton pollinator pathway. And in this audience, there were people from 5 or 6 different towns. And after the launch, where we had our state entomologists come and talk about our pollinator protection law and pollinators in general, they took that information back to their towns and they did their own launch. This is another launch in Darien where everybody dressed up like bees and they had wine and cheese and did a presentation at a nursery center, which was cool because then you could walk around and see the native plants at the nursery center. And number 4, engage community members, whether it's corporations or town stakeholders or Boy Scouts or town staff. The more people in your town that are engaged, the better, and it's fun. Yes, I know it's COVID now, but we're having plant sales, and we have socially distant plant sales where people order online and then they come and we put the plants in the car for them. So there's always ways around it. And a lot of towns may have corporations, and a lot of corporations have sustainability departments who love doing volunteer work. So plus they're usually young millennials that are really strong and good diggers. So it's good to have them on board too. And here is your community. This is your organization. This is a great photo that Jose sent me, and I just love it because I especially think it's adorable. Everybody's got their masks on. So you're going to look back at this photo someday and say, gosh, you remember that? Even during COVID times, we were able to launch a successful pollinator pathway. And look at the beautiful demonstration gardens that you've set up. I mean, this is a best practice for other towns to look to. And number 5, spread the word. And that means town newspapers, local radios, podcasts, local blogs, have events on Facebook, and encouraging people to come to events. And then here you have brochures. You can make up your own brochure. And I'll show you that these are available on the Pollinator Pathway website. So you can make your own, and we give you the blueprint for free. So you can set up your own. But it's all about spreading the word and keeping it out there, and spread the word to the towns next door too, which is really most important. And number 6, finally, stay connected. We have a shared website, pollinator-pathway.org. And rather than everybody making up their own website, we use a single website, and each town can have its own page. The events are listed on there for the town. This is where yard signs are ordered. And this is where the resources are, your PDFs, your handouts, lists of alternatives to pesticides. Everything is here on this one common site. And then you can send out e-blasts. This is what I do for the Aspetuck Land Trust. The young lady who designed the Pollinator Pathway butterfly logo has done illustrations for us for e-blasts. So in the fall, leaving the leaves alone. In the spring, find and replace the burning bush with blueberry, and just catching people's attention with a funny or positive message. Continuing with outreach, of course, through connection, have these Zooms, Plant for the Queens, have the Xerces Society come and talk, local radio shows, doing videos on organic lawn care. There's such a variety of things that you can do, and Zooms, again, I'm just like so enamored with Zooms. I don't see people getting tired of them. I really don't. And keeping the pollinator pathway affordable. By that, I mean, we developed a logo for you, the brochures we can give you, the blueprint for the brochures, and you can add your own pictures and your own town's name on it. And maps are also, if you want, to develop a map of your town where your pollinator pathway is, we can help you with that. And on the site, we also have our handouts, which are downloadable and printable. So plant lists, you probably have one in New Jersey. This is our wildflowers for pollinators through the season in Connecticut. This was done by our estate entomologist. We have trees and shrubs through the season on the other side. And we also have on the site alternatives to pesticides, how to repel ticks naturally, the problem with Roundup. All this information's been curated already, and it's on the website. So you can just print it out for free. You can put your own town name on it and keep the logo on it, and do what you want. It's all about adding your town's flavor to this initiative. And here's the signs. Of course, you all had them in that picture Jose gave me. Everybody's got these signs. They're available at cost. They cost $5. You can send them, sell them for $10 and make some money that can help you to buy plants. But this again is so important to have these on your mailbox or somewhere in a sign on the property to get people to ask about what the pollinator pathway is. And this is again on the website. It's decentralized, so it's local ownership. So we want you to go to the website, you pull down Pollinator Pathway, and here's Connecticut pathways, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. And then you click on the state, and within the state are the towns. And you click on your town, and that's where you have your local town information. Here's Philipstown, New York. This is their page. They put all of their names of all their partners on the page. A little excerpt about Pollinator Pathway, and then you can list your town activities on each page. And we have a fabulous webmaster, and she helps everybody with setting these up. And this idea is shared and it's evolving. Of course, the Doug Tallamy is our guru. We follow him. His books are incredible. And what we're trying to do is really follow his lead in bringing nature home. The pollinator pathways organized by people who are already doing this, maybe who already understand this, and they recognize that when it's engaging new organizations, it spreads the pathway. And most of our ideas, as I said, are taken from the work of Doug Tallamy, and we work pretty closely with the Xerces Society as well. So it's organizing and listening to people and moving them towards taking action. That is what's key. And it looks like NEEC is doing all of this. The work that you've been doing at the grassroots level is absolutely incredible. So my hat's off to you. And really, this is an invitation to show up and become an agent of change in your own yard, in your community. Asking people for help, reducing lawn area, asking your nurseries, your lawn care companies, your neighbors, your town, voting for representation who support issues around pollinator health, and lobbying for pollinator protection legislation. Pollinator Pathway offers a platform basically for connecting across boundaries and building alliances across town and state lines. This is a group of I think there were 5 towns here working together on maps. This was just a blast because we got to see where we wanted to connect to the town next door. And this is what I'm doing now at the Aspetuck Land Trust, which is going a bit deeper into biodiversity and overlapping pollinator pathways and green corridors. So what this means is here are the towns in our Aspetuck region. They're all full town pollinator pathways. And what Aspetuck as a land trust is doing is we overlaid a deeper dive into biodiversity. We're getting people to understand the next step after pollinators is getting those caterpillars, getting the birds that show up with the caterpillars, and understanding how our mammals are important, like our possums. Possums eat 5,000 ticks in a season. They are, you want possums in your backyard. And so we're, the Aspetuck Land Trust, focusing on the green corridor, which goes the next step for biodiversity. And the other action step that sprung out of the pollinator pathway is that we're telling people to buy native plants, and we couldn't find them anywhere. They're very hard to find in the stores, like true native plants. So this prompted a new program called the Ecotype Project. And it is so interesting because what it is our local wild collected seeds, not wild collected plants, wild collected seeds. We have a group of botanists who go out in the field in our region. We are in ecoregion 59. Our ecoregion is most of Connecticut, coastal New England, up to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, up to New Hampshire, and southern Maine. That's how far our ecoregion is. So we can get seeds from southern Maine and plant them in Connecticut. But we collect them in this area. Botanists collect them. We bring them to organic farmers like here, and they grow founders plots. So here's Joe Pyeweed, here's ironweed. This is the source of this organic seed, which we then we clean the seed and we send it to nurseries. And the organic nurseries will grow flats of 32 of ecotype plants. So last year we sold, and this is the team of us that, this is Sal Gilberti at Gilberti's Farm, who's working with us. Connecticut NOFA is also working with us. They are the drivers of the Ecotype project. And we started out with 7 species, that's it. This year we're now up to 40 Ecotype true natives. These are the plants that the pollinators have been waiting for, and we're finally growing them one step at a time. But it has been a fun project to get people to understand collecting these seeds and spreading them into the landscape where we can begin to plant them in habitats for pollinators and birds. We put over 11,000 ecotype plugs into our region, in the Aspetuck region last year. So the ecological impact of these native plants was that last year we put close to 11,000 of the ecotype perennials in, and almost close to 14,000 native trees and shrubs. So we're getting people to understand to plant in layers, and that's what brings the biodiversity. Our impact was we got almost 500 new green corridor partners, which are really like pollinator pathway partners. Over $80,000 in sales. I couldn't believe it. And of course, here's our plant sale with all of our masks on it. So we get new members, and we made money that we could buy new plants. So, you know, whether you're in COVID or not, and no matter how big or small your organization is, these native plant sales are key to getting these plants into the landscape. In addition to propagating the plants, the illustrator that we work with, Paige Lyons, the person who came up with the Pollinator Pathway logo, has illustrated for us and drawn out planting plans. So this helps people who want to put like a 10 by 5, or we did a small mailbox 5 by 5 with all of these were the original species of native plants that we propagated. And so from here we went to planting layered designs, and this was the second plant sale where we added the trees and shrubs and made bigger planting plans for people. So this was our plant sale, and somebody said it looks like you've dropped a forest at Nature Center where we had the plant sale. So the Pollinator Pathway has really been the catalyst for all of this. We would never have done this if it weren't for the Pollinator Pathway over the last 4 years. And we tell people to look for unexpected partners, and unexpected partners would be like landscapers, critically important. People who design the landscapes, people who mow the lawns. This is an organic company for organic lawn care. Of course, Connecticut NOFA. So let's look for other partners outside of our own towns. And here's an unexpected partner, our Connecticut Department of Transportation. They have pollinator conservation areas that they've been doing tests on all over the state. And this is the pollinator protection law that said the Department of Transportation shall identify opportunities for replacement of non-native cool season turf grasses with native plants. And once a law says shall, they shall do it, and they are doing it. And we're so proud of the DOT because these are all the test sites all over the state where they are planting pollinator habitat. The state of Connecticut DOT is the largest landowner in our state. So when they change the way they treat their backyards, it has a huge impact, and you see a sea change. Another unusual partnership is with our water company. They're doing a project with us on water conservation and native plants, because you know native plants don't need as much water as our invasive plants. So that's a partner. And they're doing great things for us in providing funding for these gardens. And this is one of the projects that the water company is helping us with. It's a pollinator corridor research study. We're working in collaboration with a Massachusetts-based team, the Beecology Project and Landscape Interactions, and we've got 20,000, it's not acres, I'm sorry, it's square feet of pollinator habitat. We've got a courtyard garden, an entry garden, a bee lawn, a meadow, a pond side area, and an ecotone transition. All will be planted with native pollinators. The bee project, Dr. Robert Gagier, ecologist, came in and he did a baseline last year to see what pollinator species we have now. We're planting this in May and June, and he's going to come back for the next 3 years, and he's going to see what shows up. And this is our proof. This is our proof that planting, and it will be our proof that planting these plants brings the pollinators and increases biodiversity. Science informs the design, and the plants drive the results. So these are our tools, our new pollinator pathway tools for 2021. We have a story map, which is kind of an interactive book that's online. It's really cool. And then we just developed a pesticide brochure. And so these should be on our website too. This is a really good teaching tool for people to understand what the pollinator pathway is. And again, as I said at the end, I would bring back to that same slide again and show you these are the takeaways. The power of the charismatic butterfly, positive message, stay positive around local actions, the importance of keeping it simple and affordable, decentralized control, add the flavor of your town to the pathway, and that's how it works. And then an excuse to cross boundaries and talk within the towns, across the towns, and across the state lines. And this is why the pollinator pathway has worked so beautifully. So the secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but building the new. And I always loved, this kind of a poem, but I just find that this discussion about courage and what it mentions is that the world looks to leaders to model courage. When your passion overtakes your fear, courage emerges. Courage is acting in the face of fear, standing up for the truth, being willing to take a risk, and actively making a difference. Now, when I put this together for the pollinator pathway, it was before COVID, and it was before the riots that we're dealing with in our nation now. And, courage is courage, and fear is fear. And so don't be afraid to go out there and talk to people about what the right thing to do is, because you can actively make a difference. And it's always easier to be courageous when you have a team working with you. So I encourage you all to go out and spread this pollinator pathway across New Jersey. We are here, the steering committee is here to help. But it seems like you guys are already on your way in terms of success. So there's my name, Mary Ellen LeMay. That's my email address, melemay@aspetucklandtrust.org. And I really encourage you to go to pollinator-pathway.org. And that is where all of the good stuff is accessible to you to start your own pollinator pathway. So I've left some time for questions if anybody has any. So I will stop sharing my screen and then open up to questions if there are any.
Wow, Mary, that was a terrific presentation. Thank you so much for that education. I know that you can't hear it right now, but I know all of our attendees are clapping their hands. I can hear it up in the sky right now. And again, that was a fantastic presentation. So friends, attendees, how we will be doing the questions, we have a few minutes for questions. We'll try to fit in as many as we can. What we'll do is, if you would like to ask a question, please just raise your hand on the Zoom call, and I will promote to a panelist like us so we could see your face if you're comfortable, and we could hear you ask your question real time, so we can have some kind of interaction, you know what I mean, even though it's not like we're in person typically. But again, please raise your hand. I will call on you. Try to keep your question brief, maybe to a minute. I really don't want to have to cut anybody off, so just be thoughtful, because again, we still have some other people we want to hear from, and we also want to hear Mary respond to your questions. So again, if anybody has any questions, you may raise your hand in Zoom and I will happily call on
you. And you can also email me questions. I would be happy to answer.
And you provided your email, right, Mary?
Yes, I did. And I will also share with Jose. I'll give him my PowerPoint presentation so you guys can have that as well.
Terrific. So again, this is our time for questions. If anybody wants to ask a question, someone has their hand up. I'm going to bring them in. Nancy. Hello, Nancy. Feel free to unmute. Please be quick with your question.
I'd like to ask Jose and our speaker both if there are places that you would suggest or events that are coming up where we can figure out how to get the seeds or the plants for forested kind of areas in this vicinity or in and around Montclair?
Awesome, Nancy. Thank you for that question. I will bring you back to the attendee section, and Mary and/or Jose, whoever.
Yeah, I can answer the question. We have a partnership and collaboration with the New Jersey Native Plant Society and other nursery around. We also have a program related to the Northeast Earth Coalition. The Seed and Plant Exchange is free. People are exchanging plants locally. So if you have any questions, I can share with you the information, or just visit our website for additional details. Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you, Jose. Anything to add, Mary?
No, that's the best information you can get is locally on local seeds, because you are in a different eco-region than I am. So local is best, and that's what our native creatures are looking for, is your local plants. So whatever information Jose can provide for that is great. And what we can do is our Connecticut NOFA, you probably have NOFA is a Northeast Organic Farming Association, and we can connect them to your group as well, because they're the ones that really know how to do this eco-type seed collection and propagation. And if you can find a local nursery that's organic, that's willing to propagate these, that's the best thing to do. And the nurseries, this nursery we're using loves it, because these are kind of, they have weed in their name. So milkweed, ironweed, and they have weed in their name because they are strong plants and they propagate beautifully. So the nurseries just love them because they really emerge as great plants for people's backyards. So the more we do this locally, the stronger the biodiversity will be in our area.
Yeah, and actually, Jose, if you recall, not last year, but I think the year before, we had the I want to say director of the New Jersey chapter of NOVA. He was in attendance to our conference. I remember talking with him, and they also do amazing work all up and down the East Coast, just like us. Any other questions from our attendees? Any other questions? Feel free to raise your hand.
Someone mentioned in the chat that a company called Izel, I-Z-E-L, and they are excellent. They are a great online site for native plants. So thank you for mentioning that in the chat. That's a great source.
We have another person raising their hand here. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Please feel free to connect me. Phaedra?
Sorry, I didn't even realize I was on. I'm a member of the Essex County Native Plant Society. So anybody who wants to reach out to us for information about plants, we can help you find them. We'll be doing plant sales in the spring. I would actually love to ask a question about the seed project that you started, because it is challenging to get local nurseries to provide native plants. And if we give them seed, I'm not actually sure that they would grow them. So I wonder if there is an interim partner that is actually doing the starter planting before they go to the nurseries.
So we have these the founders plots, which creates the seed source, and so the nursery, we have a small nursery that is just going to start doing some of these eco-type seeds. The nursery that we're using, I mean, it's a pretty big nursery, and this was a big kind of jump for them to begin to propagate these. So it's called Planter's Choice, and it's in Newtown, Connecticut. And he has been so successful with this these plants, because he's went, as I mentioned, from 7 species to 17, and now he's at 40 species. So he may, I'm sure he would love to, if you have some eco-type seeds from your area, he's very careful about propagation. So he probably would help to get a couple of your local species started. And he does them in flats of 32. which are really a good size, and people will, because you can pop them out and make mixed flats. So Daryl Newman is his name, and he is at Planter's Choice in Newtown. So he may be able to help you, if you want to get started, or maybe he knows a local nursery. He can talk to a local nursery and say, this is a great deal. This is the future. And we will make a lot of money if we sell these native seeds. So that's what I would recommend, getting these nurseries to talk to each other through like an organization like yours, or
Planter's Choice is a good source. We have been working with them for years.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. Now we have time for one more question before we move to our next speaker. So if anybody would like to ask a question to Mary and her wonderful plethora of information, now is the time to do so. Again, she provided her email, so you can feel free to speak offline with her. Oh, the ANJEC appears to have a question. I believe that's the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions. I received a piece of their correspondence in my office not too long ago. Feel free to unmute yourself. Ask your question.
My question is, what is the best source for buying caterpillars?
Oh,
Short and sweet question. I love it. Thank you for sharing.
you know what? I can't answer that question because I've never bought caterpillars. I guess I raised them myself on my oak leaves. So I don't know. Maybe Jose has that answer, but I don't have that question.
Underground market of caterpillars, perhaps.
We don't promote getting caterpillar especially from butterfly, because they are the easy way to transmit diseases if they are not into the wild. So never do that.
Oh, wow. A word of caution, Jose. Thank you very much for that. So, Mary, thank you so much for your presentation. That was amazing. Again, a very big wealth of information. I'm very happy that I was here for that. And again, I know that you can't hear it, but I can feel the vibrations of all the clapping going on right now.
Well, thank you very much, everybody. I'm honored to speak for your organization, and feel free to reach out if you ever have any questions, and good luck with the rest of your conference, Jose. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. We are very honored to have you. Wonderful presentation. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mary, too. Please be safe, stay healthy.
Thank you.
All right, attendees, next up, we're going to be bringing in one of our virtual tabling groups. Our first one for our 6th annual conference is going to be the Montclair Climate Change Group. And I believe that is going to be by our friend, Mr. David Cordage. I hope I pronounced your last name right, Dave.
Corfage.
Oh, thank you so much for correcting me. I appreciate that.
That's okay.
David, feel free to take the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Good to see you. I actually want to thank Jose and the Northeast Earth Coalition for allowing me to present this evening on behalf of Montclair Climate Action. I've been at the conference for several years running now. I always learn something new. Last year, it was winter cover crops, which I tried this year to not as much success as I would have liked. I'll try again next year. And I now clearly have my work cut out for redoing the plants in my backyard. I was taking copious notes during Mary Ellen's presentation, so I always appreciate coming here. My name, as was said, is David Corfage. I'm a teacher. I've lived in Montclair for 14 years. And since this is a virtual event, I'm presenting from home, as you can see, from the bedroom of my oldest son, now off at college, which I've commandeered as a work from home space for this year. But it does seem that like an appropriate space to give this talk, because like many people working in climate, thinking about my own children has really been a powerful motivation. I did environmental work before we had children. BC is what my wife and I call it, before children. But certainly having children added to the urgency of leaving a livable world for future generations. So at an event like this, I don't have to spend a lot of time selling you on the reality of climate change or rehearsing what's likely to happen if we don't do anything. You all know the facts: higher temperatures, longer heat waves, more heat deaths, with parts of the earth potentially becoming literally uninhabitable for human beings. More downpours, which is already happening in the Northeast United States. Heavy downpours have increased over the past couple decades. Larger hurricanes leading to more flooding, rising oceans, flooding seaside areas from Asbury Park to Bangladesh. Millions of climate refugees driven from their homes by drought, by flooding, by sea level rise, coral reefs dying off through bleaching and ocean acidification, habitat loss and species extinction exacerbating the tremendous wildlife loss we've already experienced. Mary Ellen actually mentioned the threats to insects, and I was actually reading that German study recently that was appalling, but I've also seen the World Wildlife Fund has said that up to 2/3 of wildlife in the world has disappeared just in the last 50 years. So there's a lot of reason to be concerned. And that's what we can expect. All that and more is what we can expect if we don't change course. The good news is change is in the air, right? As we all know, in Washington, D.C., with the new policies of the Biden administration, in other cities and capitals around the world. But it's not enough yet. The IPCC, the global scientific panel which advises on climate change, has called for a 45% cut in greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2030. So that's just 9 years to cut greenhouse gas emissions almost in half. 9 years for an almost cut in half. But again, you all know that. You probably wouldn't be here if you didn't have these concerns. So what does that have to do with the group I'm involved with, which is called Montclair Climate Action? So MCA has been organized by a group of concerned citizens of Montclair, neighbors, friends, moms and dads. We decided that Montclair, both its residents and its government, need to do more to address the climate crisis. All of us in the group have done our part over the years, done what we could to lessen our own environmental impact. And what we found, what we all found, and the theme that ran through our conversations about this was that acting individually wasn't enough, that collective action was what we needed. We created this problem together and we can only solve it together. But what exactly does that mean? So what is Montclair Climate Action? Well, let's tell you about what it is, but what does it do? So our mission is to achieve significant steps towards greenhouse gas reduction and climate change adaptation by the government and the residents of Montclair. Through organizing, through education, through outreach, we want to turn Montclair into a climate leader. So part of our work is education, making sure that people are aware of what they can do to fight the climate crisis, whether that's opting up for 100% renewable energy in our community choice aggregation program. And if you live in Montclair and you got the letter, I hope you saw, there's now an option to bump up to 100% renewable energy, so which be a wonderful investment in renewable energy and in a livable future. So I encourage all of you who are in Montclair to join that program and do the opt-up. That's a good way you can contribute and then sort of do that investment. So we want to educate people about things like that, about renewable energy, saving money by installing solar power, rooftop solar, for example. But as I said, individual action isn't enough. So we also want to work with the township government to get policies in place that will help us all cut emissions, like together. So making it a collective effort and not just an individual one. There are many people in our government who want to do the right thing. And I know because I've been in these meetings, I've heard people talk, they've got the goals, they've got the mission, they want to do the right thing. So Montclair Climate Action wants to help them by mobilizing people and create a movement to support the political leaders who want to do the right thing on climate and show them that we have their back. We want to sort of mobilize the population and create a movement to do this. So whether that's virtual contacts now in COVID times, or once we get out of this, hopefully tabling, presentations, even door-to-door work to mobilize the community and show them that climate change is important, that we can do things individually, but we can redo our community in a systemic way to alter it so that we can take action to address this climate crisis, to inspire our neighbors to make a better Montclair by investing in a better future for our children and grandchildren. So if all that seems pretty general, that's because we're actually brand new. Like we're meeting in a week, we're meeting a week from today, and that is literally our 4th meeting. So we're just getting started. That means we are a wide open opportunity for people in Montclair who want to help. We welcome all new ideas. Anyone committed to helping with the climate crisis. Now, obviously, we want to hit high impact things. We're aiming both for individual action, but also for the systemic change. But I also feel very strongly that what you're passionate about is what you should do. So if you're interested in issues of waste, we have people who are interested in energy, we have people interested in transportation, we have people interested in waste issues and compost and recycling, we have people interested in trees, tree cover and tree plantings, both as a way of adaptation and as a way of sort of taking carbon out of the atmosphere. So if you're interested in any of those, or you have other ideas, we'd love to have you join our group. Montclair, you can go to our website. I'll give it again. It's www.montclairclimateaction.org, or just, and I'll give you that information again in a minute. If you're not from Montclair, there's still, what I'd love to is you can help out to get in touch with us and get in touch with your local green groups. And let's see if we can build a county-wide movement to make Essex County a leader in climate action. We can work together, even to back state level initiatives, like, for example, the Empower New Jersey campaign, which is a campaign against fossil fuel constructors. So again, so if you're interested in working for us, you can head to our website. It's www.montclairclimateaction.org, just one long string of letters. You can also email us at info@montclairclimateaction.org, although there is also a contact site on the website, a contact form on the website. You can leave your information there and get on our mailing list. And we are meeting a week from today. It's our virtual meeting. It's our 4th meeting. We're going to be trying to plan out our actions for the rest of the year. What are our priorities to be and what we're going to focus on. And we're going to work with the Montclair Environmental Commission and the township as much as possible to promote things and see if we can really push in a direction that's going to be productive. So in the end, again, it's always worthwhile, following up what Mary Ellen said, to like focus on where you want to go. So I want everyone to imagine a sort of different Montclair that's powered by renewable energy, a Montclair that's walkable, with electric vehicles or public transportation, a Montclair of clear skies, of like green spaces and tree cover in all parts of towns, rich and poor, that provide a respite from summer heat, and a town that people will visit and say, how can we do that too? A town that will be here for our children and their children and the future generations after that. That Montclair is the town that we at Montclair Climate Action want to see. So if you want to help us, if you want to see it too, then please join our efforts. And again, you can head to our website, you can send us an email, and we'll be happy to have you join us. So that's a little bit about the group. And if obviously there's questions I can answer, but you can just check out our website. The website is very much under construction. We just have unveiled it, and there are still sites to be building out, but we have some basic information there. And we really hope to make it a go-to site for information about both how you can approach the government and also things you can do on your own. So again, thanks to Jose for giving me a chance to present the group here. We'd love to have people involved. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
David, thank you so much for sharing all that. Again, just like the NEEC, just like as a whole, everyone that comes to this conference is all doing very important work. And it's very important that we're here sharing these ideas, like Jose said, identifying with each other and common goals. I'm actually just going to inform everybody, just because we have another speaker, we're going to save the questions to the end, just so we can maximize our next speaker's time also, because it's already 8:30. Again, even though we're virtual, time flies when you're having fun. That typically happens here at our conferences. So this one person with their hand up, sorry, just gonna lower your hand and hand the microphone over to Miss Lauren O'Brien. Feel free to take the floor, Lauren.
Hi, David, that is awesome. Montclair is fantastic. So inspirational. Thanks for having me. I'm Lauren O'Brien. I'm the New Jersey director of Pay Up Climate Polluters. And what David's talking about is really exciting because it's where we need to go, what we should be currently doing, and where we're going. And what I'm here to tell you about is where we've been, whether you know it or not. I cut down my PowerPoint a lot, and I can tell you about more resources, and Jose's handing some handouts after, but I just want to make sure you see in the chat, I did put our website and a call to action I'll be talking about and my email address. I'm with Pay Up Climate Polluters. The organization that runs us is the Center for Climate Integrity. We're national, nonpartisan, and nonprofit, funded by well-respected foundations. Our goal is to hold the fossil fuel industry accountable for what they knew when they knew it, and the fact that they deceived us about the realities of climate change and certainly their role in it. We're talking about lawsuits, plain and simple. We're talking about the fact that municipalities, states, Washington, D.C., and a trade industry association are taking them to court for not only social justice, but also to make sure that taxpayers aren't the only ones left footing the bill for the cost of all we need to do to protect ourselves from climate, to adapt and to mitigate. So these lawsuits have been occurring all the way across the country, and they're going at a very rapid rate right now. There have been 10 more lawsuits that have occurred since I've been on for the last year. These lawsuits range from public and private nuisance to consumer protection to product liability and more. The important thing to note is that the lawsuits need to be in state court, not kicked to federal court like the industry wants. And I want you to know that our Attorney General Graywall is in favor of state jurisdiction and wrote an amicus brief for 5 different lawsuits not here in New Jersey, but here on this list, to make sure that that happens. Why are we holding them accountable? Because they've known the industries as producers of dangerous products. They've known exactly what their products have been doing to the environment since at least 1963 and earlier. There are hundreds and hundreds of pages out there that show things like this. I'm only showing you one example of a deceptive page of a report, and there were many, many more. So you can read the title of the report on the left. I want to let you know that this was in 1968 commissioned by the American Petroleum Institute to Stanford Research Institute to say, hey, what happens when we pump these gases into the atmosphere? Well, we'll tell you what happens, all this specific stuff. And no surprise that we were hearing back then about what we know now, the melting of the Antarctic ice cap, a rise in sea levels, warming of the oceans. David was talking about extreme climate impacts here. Unfortunately, in New Jersey, and this is an audience I don't have to tell, you all know that we're suffering from extreme circumstances here in terms of sea level rise and flooding and ocean acidification, et cetera. So just as another example to see, this happens to be a snapshot of 1978, the very end of a 34-page detailed report on the greenhouse effect. And I personally like this because it came from Linden, New Jersey, which is not too far from where I am right now. What we're also talking about is documentation that they deceived us, and they purposely put together campaigns and pumped millions into that to deceive us and to make the realities of climate change be doubtful. So this was a direct response from the Global Climate Science Communications team from the industry to create a victory campaign in response to the 1997 Kyoto Protocol of the United Nations, which is like what Greta Thunberg was bringing attention to. We need to reduce gas emissions, what you're talking about on this call, what we've been talking about for a long, long time. This wasn't news then, and it isn't news now. But this particular document showed that they were working to make climate change a non-issue. Basically, they toyed with information that was their detailed science and knowledge about their own products and exactly what it was going to do to the environment with specific temperature predictions that were right on. And said, well, now what? How are we going to sell our products? So instead of pivoting to something more safe for our community or making any other decisions, they decided to do things like this, which was to try to make all of us who want to believe in the realities of climate change and reduce global gas emissions, if they could prove that we are out of touch with reality, then they will have won. So they did that kind of campaigning for more decades and pumped a bunch of money into it, including paying fake scientists, hammering the message of uncertainty forward, and messaging that climate change isn't real. I want to point out the science of attribution is extremely important for court cases and why climate litigation is more popular now, because in 2014, a study came out from Richard Heady called the carbon majors. So what can actually happen now is that you can separate the natural trends of climate from human activities and fossil fuel emission production. And now you can actually trace emissions back to its top producers. So that's what this is. These are a couple graphs from Union of Concerned Scientists, and there's more on that I could explain. But we can even tie it down to specific global impacts, such as the yellow bar being ocean acidification, and that Chevron produced 2% of that around the world, et cetera. So this science is extremely important. And I also just want to point out on the left that the yellow going to orange in 1963-65 shows that most of their emissions started to come out after the documentation existed that they knew what they were doing. You all know about New Jersey climate impacts. This is like one little snapshot of what the 250-page NJDEP June 2020 report told us. And Catherine McCabe said, oh my gosh, this is so much worse than we thought, pretty much. So we have terrible sea levels. We have land subsidence. We have warmer waters, warmer land. We have urban islands. We have tons of population. We have flooding issues. We have municipalities tied to tidal waterways. We have extreme precipitation, and all of this means a lot of impacts, which equals a lot of costs. And what we're here to tell you is that polluters pay nothing for any of this, and we pay for all of it. So whether it's local, county, state, or federal money, you're paying for it. And these are just some examples of resilience projects. We have a study that just in that $25 billion box down there tells us how much seawalls would cost in New Jersey, and that's a conservative estimate. We know how expensive Sandy was, which was well over $30 billion. And we're also estimating costs of, say, air conditioning in schools and what homes could be lost due to flooding, et cetera. So it's extremely expensive, to say the least. As far as support in New Jersey, I just want to preface it by saying that President Biden and the White House, President Biden has supported this all throughout the campaign and wants to strategically support those existing lawsuits to hold big oil accountable, just like big tobacco was. In New Jersey, these are examples of resolution at local, county, and state levels that also support. And specifically what we're saying is, Governor Murphy, please get Attorney General Grewal to file suit on behalf of the state of New Jersey, like Connecticut and Delaware did in September, and like other states have done. These are, I just added a couple more right now from a presentation I did before. These are about 75 groups that have signed a letter to Attorney General Grewal with us, asking him to do just that. And these are groups, could be faith groups, associations, environmental commissions, political groups, any kind of group. If you want to see that letter, sign on with us. We would love that. Let me know. And finally, I want to say we're really excited that we have funding to deliver a postcard sheet to your door if you order it on time. And it is exactly a perforated sheet of 5 postcards. And have I kept the, oh, you'll see the call to action there in the front. I'm sorry, in the chat. Let me just switch my share really quickly so you can see it. And here it is. So if you click on the link that I put for the call to action, you will see this. So you literally just put in your mailing address, you'll receive a sheet. 1 card is to Governor Murphy, 1's to Senate President Sweeney, and 3 are to people of your choice in New Jersey. And they're all pre-printed with addresses and with postage paid. And we're offering a postcard party on March 4th, where you can do this with us. But we're also going to have Lauren Morris sharing some really fantastic via climate bingo ways that you can improve your energy use at home, which is a lot of fun. So just going to leave this with you, and certainly feel free to contact me for more, but I'll follow up with some handouts for you. And I really appreciate your time tonight on a Friday night. Thank you so much.
Lauren, don't get too ahead of yourself. It's still Thursday.
I mean, Thursday, what? Feels like Friday, apparently.
No. What's time anymore? What's time anymore?
It is Thursday, correct.
Right? No, it's all good. It's Friday in Lauren's world. It's all good.
Yes.
Well, again, very important information and some really important history for everyone to ponder on. As we could all agree, things are not always what they seem. So after that, also 2 very informative virtual tabling presentations that we had. We have about 20 minutes for questions. So please, attendees, raise your hands. We will bring you in, show your face if you're comfortable. Again, try to keep your questions somewhat brief so we could try and have our speakers here answer sufficiently for you. So again, please raise your hand if you have a question. No need to be shy. I have a question that I could that I'll pose to our 2 presenters here to try and just kick things off a little bit and get the gears moving. And either of you can answer it, both of you can answer it quickly. What do you think the best thing municipalities can do, local governments, which is really, as we see in most cases, that's the boots on the ground stuff where things could actually get done in your local governments. What do you think municipalities can do as a local government, local community to combat climate change? It's a very big issue, but everyone can do things on an individual level. What do you think a municipality could do most efficiently and effectively without breaking their budget? Because we know municipal budgets are always in the red, if not nearing the red. What do you think the best thing that they could do to fight climate change is? You're muted, Dave. You're muted.
I realized that. I feel like it's the line of 2020.
Yeah.
I'm not sure the single best thing. That's actually one of the things we want to figure out, but there's a lot of things we've talked about. In terms of township government, I actually think the slow conversion of the fleet to electric vehicles would be helpful, partly because there's a lot of evidence now that in the long run, they're actually no more expensive or cheaper if you can afford if you can do the upfront investment. And related to that, and things that encourage it around town in terms of electric vehicles, I know there's a big problem for, we've got a lot of apartment dwellers in Montclair or renters, and they may not have access to like a EV charging station. They may not have a garage. Like I could have a charging station in my garage. A lot of people don't. And probably it's an equity issue, making sure people have access to public transportation, but also sort of charging stations, they want to have that. And other stuff, the other things that we've talked about is sort of, I know there's towns around the area actually who have sort of changed the building codes to require more efficiency, which they already have here, but also require switches from natural gas.
Yeah, that's big.
Power. So there's a lot of things that we've discussed about. I know other towns are working on. One of the things one of the things we as a group want to do is like figure out what's going on and work with the Montclair Environmental Commission, which I know, because I think you're absolutely right. You want to think out what's the biggest bang for the buck. I know energy and transportation is where a lot of the greenhouse gas emissions are connected to. So I think it's probably going to be in there, but where we can get the most for the biggest bang for the buck is something we still want to figure out, do some research on.
Fleet conversion. That's a great response. Fleet conversion to something that's way more eco-friendly. And I know Mr. Gray Russell, who's the sustainability officer in Montclair, I don't see him on right now, but I'm always impressed with the work that he's done in getting Montclair and the surrounding municipalities to sign on to the community choice aggregation program, where you were able to put together your bargaining power as a municipality to petition with your dollar vote to your utility provider to have your switch turned towards renewable energy. And I always thought that was amazing. Lauren, do you have anything to add to that? Yeah, you're muted. Yeah.
Oh, I was listening to a lot of municipal leaders. I do that a lot. I mean, my thing is right now, I feel like a lot of them are focused on stormwater management.
It's a big thing right now.
And I mean, we were looking at that. We did a presentation a couple weeks ago with Union of Concerned Scientists on that as well, the impact on public health. But it seems to me that we have a huge issue with infrastructure problems and costs and renovation issues. So I know that was on everyone's mind, and just getting funding to go where we need to go that way is difficult right now because of COVID and being an economic devastation. But I would agree too that I think a lot of folks are focused on electrifying vehicles, and it seems like the state government is moving in the right direction that way. So yeah.
Fleet conversion. It seems you two are on a consensus. I actually have a question here from one of our attendees. They typed it in, and it's asking, why are there not any fines imposed to corporations that pollute towns? Which is that's a very loaded question. I think both of you could probably talk for a few minutes. Do you have a quick response to something like that? We're not in a courtroom, remember. It's okay.
I wonder if I can take you to a bunch more of my presentations. You're like such a fantastic MC.
Yeah.
I mean, look, we're trying to give them one big fat fine here, the polluters, for what they knew. But to be very clear, like our campaign is not based on pollution. I mean, a lot of people ask me about, well, what about the Exxon case in 2015 and that getting a pitiful settlement? This is different. It seems, the Attorney General is very much in favor of holding polluters accountable for contamination, and those are always, ongoing cases. But I wouldn't know what the local finding is or what that looks like. I know like Empower New Jersey might have more to say about that from the pipelines work that they do, and they talk a lot about permitting for these, wanting a moratorium until permits are updated for X, Y, and Z. But I think for me, I have to speak sort of at state level of wanting to hold them accountable in a much bigger way.
We have, I see a hand raised here from a Miss Susan Haig. I would like to give her a quick minute. Miss Susan, I'm bringing you in. Please be quick with your question as we're running out of time, and we have a couple more updates for all of our attendees before we close out the first night of our 6th conference. So Miss Susan, feel free to ask a quick question to our small little panel here.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Miss.
Great. For David. So congratulations, David. I'm interested in the kind of network of information flow across the state, whether you are connected to A, Sustainable Jersey, B, the New Jersey Sustainability Reporting Hub, which Civic Story runs, which I'm with, and also the energy aggregation, because there just seems to be a lot of synergy. There's a lot happening out there. So are you tapped into those efforts as well? Because their Sustainable Jersey has had all those infrastructure things and incentives for municipalities for many years. I'm just interested in coordinating and knowing how the info flow is happening.
Short answer is I know a lot of those organizations, and I think I've actually been good friends with colleagues with actually one of the co-chairs of the Montclair Environmental Commission. I had a lot of good conversations, and I know they're very connected with that. And so partly I want to say we're like literally, like I said, we're about 3 months old, and so we're still building out our network. And actually I'm going to jot these things down because I'd like to actually get in touch with these groups. And I believe that the Montclair Environmental Commission is involved in a lot of this, and we are sort of, to some extent, we see ourselves in a supporting role. Like we want to support the energy aggregation program, and in fact, I'd even love to see become more ambitious. I know there's a couple towns in New Jersey, I think Red Bank and I think East Brunswick, which have actually opted for sort of kind of transitioning to 100% renewable energy, which is an interesting idea down the road. So I'd be happy to connect with that. And of course, I'd be happy to have you sort of contact us via our website, which I put it in the chat. I put the link in the chat and our email in the chat as well. People can reach out there. So the short answer is I'm not connected yet, but I actually will put down the names. And I've reached out to, we've started reaching out to some groups in Essex County, like in West Orange and in Newark. And because we're starting local and I want to build from there, but I'm also happy to support efforts, whether it's Lauren's organization, for example, hopefully we can support that, or Empower New Jersey at a state level, because I think even just like individuals can only do so much on their own, I think Montclair can only do so much on its own. At some point you have to change the system more broadly for Montclair to be effective. So there are things, to go back to your question, there's things that Montclair can do on its own, but a lot of what they have to do is change statewide. And I know there's things in the state, but I also think the state itself needs to be more aggressive in its climate policy, right? And probably we as the town want to set a model that we can then go to the state and say, look, if we can set this goal, you can set it too. So I'm going to jot down those names and I'll be in touch. I know Montclair is, and so if is there any way our organization can facilitate your work, we'd be happy, sort of particularly at municipal level, would be happy to do that.
Sweet. Thank you, Dave. Yes, that's one of the best things and outcomes from this conference that I see year in and year out. the kind of bridges that are built between organizations and people who realize that they are walking down a similar path and may be able to support each other. That's one of the most important things about this conference. We are building each other, building our ideas. It's really great. Unfortunately, we're out of time for questions. Fred Erickson, I do see your hand. Please, this is a great segue to remind everybody that we still have 2 more days to our conference. Remember, the links that were provided for this conference, be sure that you have those handy because you will need those to log in tomorrow and Saturday. We will be meeting tomorrow, same time, 7 to 9 p.m. I hope to see all of you and perhaps more people on the computer screen here. And, you know, tomorrow we also have another stacked program, another great panel. We'll be hearing from Mr. Tobias Fox from Newark Science and Sustainability. We'll be hearing from Ms. Lana Mustafa from the Montclair Community Forum and Mr. Armando Cruz from the NJ Climate Save. We'll be having some time for some questions, and we'll be hearing from some more local community groups within Montclair to do another virtual tabling like we did this evening. And, you know, if we actually have a second here, Jose, if it's all right with you, do you want to let Fred ask a question quick? Give us 1 second.
Yes, you can. He can go ahead. Yeah. Just one last question for Fred.
For Fred.
Yes. Hi, Doug.
Hey, Fred.
First of all, I'm speaking to you from West Sand Lake, New York, up in the Albany area.
Nice.
And I just wanted to go back to the global warming issue, of which I don't think anyone with half a brain would argue the fact that the climate is changing and that we have to act now to deal with it. But I know what caught my ear was the fact that municipalities can do some things. And I know here in the town of Sand Lake, what we are looking at, and our local town board is actually moving forward with, is conversion of municipal lighting to LEDs. And the energy saving is significant, and not only in terms of energy, but also one thing that concerned our town at this time was the case, I'm sure, with many, many local governments, is money. And we're working with the New York Power Authority in doing that. Our local power supplier is New York State Electric and Gas, and they are on board with it as well. But it is something I know you talked about. I think somebody mentioned, one of the previous speakers may have mentioned conversion of fleets also to electric vehicles. And I mean, that's also admirable. That's a little more costly as far as our little town is concerned. We're a town of about 10,000, Doug. So, you know, we don't have a huge budget and whatnot, but it is something that is very, very workable. And New York State actually is, I'm sure, as being your neighbor, you're aware of the fact that Governor Cuomo was very, very interested in this as well, in trying to promote green energy in New York State. So I just wanted a chance to mention that. And thank you for the opportunity. Great program. My daughter lives in Glen Ridge, and she hooked me up with this. So it's wonderful. It's a great service, really, to all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Thank you for that piece. Again, like I just said, this conference is so important for so many reasons, but one of which it helps us connect with each other and learn about what other people are doing to try and fight the good fight out there. So again, like I was saying, we have a very stacked program tomorrow, a panel of local community activists that really do a lot of good work here in New Jersey. We all know that New Jersey definitely needs it, along with the rest of our country, the rest of the planet. And Saturday, we will be having the one and only Dr. Douglas Tallamy, who will be our keynote speaker, featured speaker for our 6th annual conference. I'm very excited for that. I know everyone on here is probably very excited for that. And I'm not just saying that because him and I share the same first name. It's definitely going to be a very good next couple days. I'm really looking forward to seeing you all again, hearing from the crowd and hearing from our great speakers. And with that, Jose, if you have anything else that you'd like to share. With the line of 2020, you're muted.
Yes, thank you for participating in the conference. And tomorrow is a great program with environmental activists, not only from Montclair, but from every place around. So join us for another great evening tomorrow and Saturday morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Jose, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Again, my name is Doug Roussillon. You'll be hearing from me over the next couple days. I'll be your MC, your master of ceremony. Again, this is the 6th annual Acting Locally for a More Sustainable World Conference, hosted by none other than the Northeast Earth Coalition. So again, I know I can't hear all of you, but a quick round of applause for all of our speakers, spirit fingers, snapping those fingers. And again, everybody, please stay safe, stay warm, stay healthy, and I will literally be seeing you again in less than 24 hours, and I couldn't be more excited. So tune in tomorrow, and I'll see you all then. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Great job.
everyone.
Good night.